In the last video, as I went through explaining what these four different types of resources mean, I sort of touched upon how governments try to encourage people to invest more and therefore make more of this resource of capital. And the idea was that, look, if you make more capital, then you will have more resources in the next year and therefore you will be able to make more goods and services. This, in fact, is what is known as economic growth, when you have more resources and therefore you can make more goods and services. Now, it's not just capital. I said that capital is unique because it's a man-made thing. It can be produced in factories. It can be made using all of the other resources. But land, labor, and enterprise, I mentioned, their amounts, their quantities can also be increased. It's just more difficult. You need policy tools. You just can't make these things in factories. And in fact, a lot of governments, they try to increase the amount of land, labor, and enterprise in addition to the amount of capital that they have. They always, remember we said that no matter how rich a country is, the total amount of resources are always going to be limited in relationship to the needs and wants of that society. So every government, every economy, every society tries to add and have more of these resources. And in this video, I want to talk about some of the policies and tools that the government use to have more quantity or better quality of these four resources. Now, I just want to give you a very general discussion here revolving around what countries are actually doing. And I don't want you to sort of memorize these things, but remember these basic ideas that you will build here, they are important. Because going ahead, we'll just give fancy names to all of these policies or ways in which the governments or economies try to increase the amount of these resources. We'll just give very fancy names to all of these policies. Sometimes we'll call it potential economic growth or causes of potential economic growth. Sometimes we will call these policies the supply side policies and so on and so forth. But remember, the basic ideas involved are that, look, let's pick up labor first of all. Labor is one of the resources. So again, in an effort, the country is trying to increase the amount of resources so it can make more goods and services and therefore have a better living standard. Now, if they target to try and increase the amount of labor, they can do it. The amount of human effort. Now, this is where the main issue with a lot of rich countries is that they don't have enough labor relative to all the other factors of production. Remember, the composition of all of these four resources, in addition to the total overall sum of these resources, is important. You don't want to be in a position like Japan, where they have a lot of capital, they have a lot of enterprise, but they don't have enough land, and very seriously, they don't have enough labor. That's the problem of a lot of developed rich countries. They don't have enough people of the young working age. So what they do is they sort of encourage immigration, and they specifically encourage immigration of young skilled people, and that is how they try to have more labor. But that has then implications for the developing countries from where this skilled labor is getting to these rich countries. So think of a Pakistani student, a highly skilled Pakistani student who leaves for UK and never returns. So Pakistan will lose that labor. So for Pakistan, economists say it will be a brain drain, a good brain going down the drain as far as Pakistan is concerned. But the European countries, the richer countries, the developed countries where they have shortage of labor, they will try to attract such a skilled labor. So it works in sort of both directions. On the other hand, there can be other ways in which you can increase the amount of labor. One easy way that it's good to remember for the exam is that you can try to encourage the rate of female labor force participation. Now, in developing countries like Pakistan, females compose almost half of the total population, but most of them don't work. They are not part of the labor force. They are not providing any human effort into the production process as far as economics is concerned. So this is where we say that these countries, if they encourage more females to join the workforce, that will automatically add to the amount of labor in your country. But instead of just increasing the amount of labor, many countries will also try to focus on increasing the quality of the labor they have, and that is where the importance of education comes in. every country, every policymaker would try to encourage people to have more education and improve the quality of education. Why? Because if you have more education, then your labor will be more highly skilled, and therefore they will be able to make more goods and services. The technical way of saying that is that highly educated labor, better quality labor, will have more productivity. They would be able to give you more output out of every hour that they put in to the production process. So that again tells you the basic theory behind why every government tries to encourage and improve the quantity and quality of education in any economy. So those are a few useful ways that you can remember, and later when we talk about supply side policies, you can just use this and then tell the examiner that, look, this is how you can increase the productive capacity of the country. So it becomes a supply side policy, any policy to improve education or to immigrate, sort of attract immigrants and so on and so forth. Now, what about land? Now, land is, again, we said they are natural resources, but even the amount of land can be somehow increased. Now, the prime example that comes to mind is the Palm Islands of Dubai. That is sort of land that has been literally reclaimed out of seawater. So that country has added the amount of land, the natural resource, in this case, the piece of earth that they have. Now, Singapore has done the same, but they have, basically built more of a basic necessity, a housing scheme on that reclaimed land. So the rest of the world doesn't usually hear about it, but they have also done it. And then Canada, they have sort of big resources of shale gas, which is a sort of petroleum that was totally inaccessible a few years ago because they did not have enough technology. But they have put in the effort, done the research, come up with a technology that has made it feasible to extract this shale gas at a reasonable cost. So they have sort of added or found this new natural source of land. And then that brings us to the point that, sometimes countries can just get lucky. So if Pakistan suddenly discovers that there is a lot of petroleum underneath its land, and that will add up to the amount of natural resources it has. And sometimes the government would intentionally sort of put in exploration efforts to sort of try and discover more of these natural resources. And then lastly, enterprise. These are, as I said, entrepreneurs or businessmen who come up with business ideas and then take the risk of profit or loss and organize all of these other factors of production. That is, these are the sort of people, the easy way to think about it is that these are the people who come up with startups and new business ideas. Now, how can you increase the amount of entrepreneurs in an economy? Again, the first thing that comes to mind is education. So let me do it in the right color over here. Sort of try to make more of your people go for MBA education, then arrange more seminars and workshops that encourage entrepreneurships, make more entrepreneurship societies in your schools and colleges. Now, those are the sort of soft ways in which you can do it, but the government can also go for some more direct ways where they have, the policies of giving tax breaks to startups, or maybe some easy loans to the startups to encourage more and more people to take up entrepreneurship. Now, in addition to all of these individual policies, there is also this idea of creating an overall environment of innovation and entrepreneurship, a culture of entrepreneurship and innovation. And the best example to sort of think about or understand what I mean is to think of a place like Silicon Valley. Now, that is just by nature a hub of innovation, so that attracts that sort of people, encourages and gives that environment to produce more entrepreneurs. Now, again, this was just a very general video over here, so I don't want you to sort of specifically memorize everything over here, but just remember that the basic issue that we are building up is that these resources are limited, and they will always be limited. But we are just saying that the countries, they will try to sometimes sort of try and increase the amount of whatever limited resources they have, so that they can produce more goods. And these policies, or all of you can say techniques or ways, just remember them broadly, and later we will fit them in when we talk about policies to achieve economic growth, when we'll talk about the shifts of PPC, when we'll talk about the supply side policies, and so on and so forth.